Welcome and good afternoon. This is Commish Orr, and today I'm going to give you a little recap of the best of the 1990s tournament. Of course, using season ticket baseball. We wrapped up with a World Series, which was very dramatic. Go check those games out if you want to watch those played. The spoilers ahead if you have not. Obviously, you can see on the screen. But what started off as what looked like it was going to be an Atlanta Braves sweep turned into a miraculous comeback by the Oakland Athletics as they won the next three games. The third game of those three games they won with a go-ahead home run, two-run homer in the ninth inning. So very dramatic, forced to Game 7. And Game 7 looked like, again, that Atlanta was going to run away with it, but they Oakland scored a couple of runs. They got back into it. They got within a run, had bases loaded with two outs, and then could not score after that. And of course, there was a key error in that game that led to two unearned runs that ultimately also did them in. So very dramatic, but I thought we'd take some time here to take a look at the tournament as a whole, how players did, and of course looking ahead. So if you're here watching, I'm currently trying to figure out which decade I'm going to do next. I've done the 1930s and I've done the 1990s. And so anything from the 1920s to the 2000s is available to do. I think I had one suggestion for the 1960s, and I've had a suggestion for the 1980s. So I'm currently going to be deciding that before moving ahead and getting the league set up. With all that said, let's take a look at some stats here, and let's start with the World Series stats. So I use Ballstat to kind of do the stats for this, and I'm going to blow this up a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. And so some of the formatting is a little odd here. You can just disregard that, and they're not sorted in the right order. But I thought I'd take a look at some of the standout batting and pitching stats here for this World Series. And as you can see, looking at the Braves roster, which are the top players here, let's see, Walt Weiss in the leadoff spot hit 241 with a 333 on base. Not very great, but decent. This is pretty much in their batting order for the most part, for the Braves at least. Keith Lockhart hit 258. Let's see, Chipper Jones, who I waited and waited to go off, and he did not. 241 batting average. He didn't hit any homers, and only had a 290 on base. 241 slugging, not very good all the way around. He had 7 hits, all of them singles. He only had a couple of walks. Very surprising from him. I expected more. But then Andres Galarraga made up for that, and he actually earned World Series MVP honors for hitting 448. He was 13 for 29. He didn't walk. He didn't have a single walk in the entire series. But of his 13 hits, 7 of them were home runs. So he had a 1.172 slugging and a 1.621 on OPS. And he had 3 different games where he hit 2 homers, which was crazy. I think games 2 and 3, he hit 2 homers in each of those games. And then he hit 2 homers in game 7, of course. He drove in 19 runs and was just a monster in those games that he actually went off. Ryan Klesko got injured for a couple of those games. He only hit 214. Again, no extra base hits for him even. Javi Lopez only hit 179, but he had a couple of home runs. Gerald Williams hit 269. He had the only stolen bases for the Braves. He had a couple of stolen bases. Andrew Jones hit 346, so he would probably be next in terms of hitting for the Braves. He hit 346, had a couple of homers, 949 OPS. Overall, really good. And then Michael Tucker. Michael Tucker hit 280, and he was in the number 9 spot. And then finally, Danny Bautista, who filled in for Ryan Klesko when Klesko was injured for a couple of games, he hit 273. He had a home run, and he had a 970 OPS down in batting for those games that he started for Ryan Klesko. Overall, the team hit 278. Not a lot of walks. They only average a couple walks a game. But the slugging, 13 homers. They didn't hit a triple, but 13 homers and 7 doubles. They had a lot of power there behind them, especially from Galarraga. Meanwhile, let's go to the 1990 Oakland Athletics. And not sure exactly what order they're in, but starting off here is Carney Lansford, who he did fairly well during the during the tournament as a whole, but he hit 464 in the World Series. Now, he only had one double. That was his only extra base hit. He only walked once. But he was great at getting on base. 483 on base, 983 OPS for Lansford. Terry Steinbach only hit 217, catching for Oakland. Dave Henderson hit 296. He had a couple of homers. Terry Steinbach, by the way, had a couple of homers too. Dave Henderson had a couple of homers. 863 OPS. And of course, Ricky Henderson. Ricky Henderson came into this series hitting over 400. Only hit 231 during the series. However, he did have a couple of very key home runs. So he had a couple of homers. He drove in 4 runs, but they were very, very key situations. He also stole 5 bases. So he had 5 stolen bases. When he did get on base, it changed the game. If he could have gotten hot a little bit, things could have turned out differently. Jamie Quirk, mostly as a pinch hitter, was 0 for 4. Willie Randolph, who got injured early in the series, 0 for 8. So didn't have a hit. Got injured early in the series. Walt Weiss hit 259. Of course, Weiss was on both teams, interestingly enough. Jose Canseco. Canseco was the star for Oakland in terms of offense. He hit 346, so not as high as Lansford, but he had 3 homers and 8 RBI. A couple of those came in one of the games. And he also walked. He also got on base. So 126 OPS. Mike Gallego in for Willie Randolph when Randolph got injured. Hit 250. Not bad. Respectable as a fill-in. Mark McGuire never really did anything. He had 1 home run, but he only hit 185 in the series. Couldn't really get anything going on offense. And then Willie McGee. McGee also 345 hitter. So he was good at the top of the lineup. And had his share of walks, got on base, but made a couple of very costly errors in the series. And so their team batting average was also 278, interestingly enough. Their on base was a little better. They had 24 walks compared to 14 for Atlanta. So on base was 345 compared to 318, but their slugging was much lower. Well, not much lower, but lower. 464 for Atlanta, 432 for Oakland. And home runs, they had 10 home runs compared to 13 for Atlanta. They only had 5 doubles compared to 7 for Atlanta. But overall, pretty close. I mean, the OPS, 782 for Atlanta, 776. Very, very close in terms of offense for these two teams. Very close. Let's take a look at the pitching. let's take a look at the pitching. Now, coming into it, I would have said that the Braves had overall best pitching, but Oakland had some great pitching heading into the World Series. So, of course, at that point, it's anybody's game. Looking at the top starters, we see Greg Maddux, who came in with an ERA of around 1. And in game 1, he lived up to that and pitched a shutout. However, the second start on 3 days rest, he did not do so well, and he allowed 8 runs. So when it all played out, he had a 233. Opponents hit 233 against him. Their number 2 was Glavine. Same story. Game 2 for Glavine, he took a shutout into the 9th. But in his second start, he got rocked pretty much. Opponents hit 321 against him. And then Smoltz was the number 3, but he got injured in the 3rd inning of his first start. But up until that point, he was cruising. The other starter for them was Kevin Millwood. Millwood filled in for Smoltz when he got injured and pitched Game 7. And Millwood pitched great in both cases. Allowed just 2 earned runs in 10 and a third inning. So opponents hit 263 against him. And then, of course, Nagel, I guess. Nagel had the other start. He allowed 5 earned runs in 7 innings. Not a great start. Looking at the relievers, John Rocker came in a couple of times, but he allowed some stuff in a couple of those times. Dennis Martinez got hit around a little bit in a couple of innings. Leitenberg, he blew a save, but then in the Game 7, he struck out 3 straight batters. So, overall, I'd say successful. Overall, the team ERA for Atlanta was 4.87. 4.87. Now, looking at Oakland, their Dave Stewart is really their top starter, and he had a rough time of it. He had a rough time. Opponents hit 368 against him. The really standout for them was Bob Welch. Welch hung neck and neck with Maddux in Game 1 and pitched very well in his second start. So opponents only hit 217 against him. Scott Sanderson. Of course, Sanderson pitched in Game 7. Didn't do terrible, but he did get kind of knocked around in his prior start. And that's the reason for his kind of bad stats there. And then I believe Mike Moore had the other start, and he only lasted 4 innings in his other start, or his start. Oakland relievers, though, overall did pretty well. Todd Burns pitched 5 scoreless innings of relief. Joe Klink, Gene Nelson, they pitched a combined 4 2/3 innings of relief, scoreless. Kurt Young, 4 scoreless innings. Eckersley, in the times that he came in, 2 scoreless innings. So overall, they had great relief, but unfortunately, in a lot of those games, the game was already out of hand by the time those relievers came in. Team ERA is a little lower at 4.65, and you'll note if you look at the earned runs compared to the runs allowed, that Atlanta did not allow any unearned runs. Oakland allowed 9 unearned runs. Pretty crazy. They had, I believe, when I looked, 4 errors for Oakland and 7 or 8 for Atlanta, 4 errors for Atlanta, and I think 7 or 8 for Oakland. And a couple of those came in at really key times. So Willie McGee made a key error that allowed 2 earned runs in Game 7, and the score ended 6-4. So, again, a lot of impact there from those. So that's taking a look at the 2 World Series teams during the World Series, at least. let's take a look at some of those stats. If I can pull it up here. Oops. Yeah, I got to find it here, folks. There we go. So let's blow this up a little bit. And look at the tournament teams overall. So again, not all because it's a tournament, not all these teams played the same number of games. But overall, Toronto in their 15 games had the best team batting average of 308, but they had one of the worst ERAs at 550. Oakland, we've already talked about them. In the tournament as a whole, they hit 267, so they hit a little better in the World Series. But they had the best ERA in the American League, 370. The New York Yankees, 262. Cleveland, they only played 8 games, 269. Of course, the White Sox only played 3 games, so they got swept, I believe. So that's what you see there. Oakland had by far the most home runs, but they also played a lot of games because they made it all the way. But even despite that, Toronto was the only team that had better slugging of the American League teams. Taking a look in the National League, we see the best hitting National League team was the Houston Astros, the 1998 Houston Astros. They hit 298, followed closely by Montreal, but Atlanta was not far behind, and Atlanta had the best ERA at 403. So not too surprising that they would make it through the tournament. If we take a look at some of the leaders, and you have to take these again because some of these rate stats, some of these teams didn't play a lot of games. But the overall best batting average was by Kenny Lofton for the Cleveland Indians, 452 average. Moises Alou for Montreal hit 440. John Olerud for Toronto hit 435. A lot of guys hit pretty well. If you're trying to find the, well, you'll see that there's none of the batting average leaders were in the World Series. Ricky Henderson was on this leaderboard heading into the World Series. Slugging, Kenny Lofton, 774. Moises Alou, 773. So those guys were terrors. We have Galarraga here at 707, followed by Ricky Henderson at 700. So a couple of the World Series guys made it on the list. And the 4 home run leaders overall were all in the World Series. Now, again, some of that's because they played more games. But you have Ricky, McGuire, and Canseco, Galarraga all had 9 homers. Javi Lopez was not far behind with 7. Danny Bautista with 4. And he was kind of a part-time player. So that's interesting. In terms of RBI, Jose Canseco, overall leader with 27. But Galarraga right behind him with 26. Now remember, Galarraga, 19 of those came in the World Series? Crazy. Crazy. And then Ricky led on 2 different teams for stolen bases. 17 with Oakland, 13 with Toronto. Pretty much every time he got on base, there was a threat there of him stealing. So pretty interesting stuff. And then if we look at the pitching leaders, again, you kind of have to take some of this with a grain of salt because, for example, the White Sox only played 3 games. So not surprising that they would have a low ERA there. But Maddox, 2.30 ERA. Dwight Gooden for the Mets, 2.25. David Cone for the Yankees, 2.51. Of course, Dave Stewart, 4 wins, just tied with Greg Maddux. But they also had more starts, keep in mind. Stewart had the most strikeouts of anybody, again, because he had the most starts, 55. Then you have, of course, Eckersley had 7 saves. Leitenberg had 5. Mariano Rivera was kind of sandwiched in between there with 6. But again, a lot of those are because they played more games. If we look at the opponent's batting average, Maddox allowed opponents to only hit 153 against him. 153. And a slugging of 227. Though Gooden was a little better with a 207 slugging against him. Maddox only allowed 6.7 base runners per 9 innings. Dwight Gooden, 675. So Gooden was very good himself. Home runs allowed. David Wells. I said this during the Yankees series with Oakland, but every time he pitched, it was an experience. 14 home runs allowed. That's double anybody else. Crazy. But yeah, game started, of course. Dave Stewart had 9 starts. Bob Welch had 7, just because they played more games mostly, and that's why you have them like Dave Stewart leading in walks allowed and that kind of thing as well, just because they're getting just so many more starts. So very interesting stuff here. The fielding leaders, there's not really a lot to see on this, but if we go back to, actually, if we go back to here, there's a fielding section, and we can take a look at overall fielding percentage per team. And we see Toronto, and again, the White Sox only played 3 games, but Toronto had a 993. They were the best fielding. Oakland not far behind, 975. And the best fielding in the National League, was the Braves, 989. Followed closely by the Expos at 981. And it did make a lot of difference. As I said, those 9 unearned runs in the World Series could have made all the difference, especially in Game 7. So that's just a quick little recap of the of how things stood with the teams, how they finished up. As always, if you head over to baseballmaelstrom.com, you can follow all the action. There's a tab that you can go to for the 90s tourney. There's a little write-up on every game, along with the box score and score sheets. You can take a look at those. My other project, of course, is Payoff Pitch. That's going to be ongoing. And you can also see all my past projects. So I've done one History Maker Baseball all-time franchise greats tournament. You can see the stats from that. You can see my Payoff Pitch Season 1. I'm in Season 2 right now of that. Of course, you can see the best of the 1930s tournament. That one's complete as well. And it is my intention to do a best of the decades for all of the decades available for a season ticket. And then at that time, the idea is that I will have an overall best of all time with all the winners of all the tournaments. But given my play pace, that's going to take me a few years to do. So this one took me, for those of you who are curious, I think 74 games. 74 games in the tournament total. So I play about 4 games a week, roughly. And I alternate between season ticket and Payoff Pitch. So at 4 games a week, that's what, 18-ish weeks to complete one of these best of tournaments. And since I'm playing every other week, that's 36 weeks. So you're looking at about, 8+ months to complete one of the best of the decades tournaments from the time I start to the time I finish. And there is a lot of prep that goes on. I think I have some videos on here if you want to check out what all I do to prep for one of these. You can check those out. But if you've made it this far, let me know down in the comments. Is there a particular decade you are interested in seeing next? Leave those down in the comment. Hopefully you enjoyed following this series through, seeing who came out on top. Interesting to note that the 1998 Braves didn't even win the World Series in 1998. However, they did come out on top in this tournament. Very strong team, strong pitching rotation, so not too surprising overall. And I look forward to seeing what happens next with the next decade that we're gonna look at. So, with all that said, we will stop things here for now. I thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a great evening.